Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's Jessica Lundgren, dating and self-worth coach. We are here with another guest speaker, Linda Bloom. Linda, welcome to the event. I am so glad you can join us.
I'm delighted to be with you.
Linda is a psychotherapist and marriage counselor who teaches communication seminars and relationship workshops. And she is the co-author of a best-selling book, 101 Things I Wish I Knew When I Got Married, Simple Lessons to Make Love Last. Linda is going to be talking with us today about conflict and how to have healthy conflict in a way that you can actually build your connection with your partner. So Linda, can you tell us a little bit about like what healthy conflict is and how can you get there?
Thank you for the question. Because some
Yeah.
people don't even ask themselves this question or discuss this with the people that they're closest to. And healthy conflict is the kind of interchange, even if it's got strong emotions attached to it, where both people understand each other more deeply. So when we have tension, power struggles, aggravation in our relationships, not just with the romantic partner, it can be with, our parents, our siblings, our kids, on the job with a supervisor or coworker. That is growth waiting to happen. And with both people have a contract with each other, an agreement that they want to learn and grow and understand out of those conflicts. You got a good arrangement there. That's a mighty agreement. And some people have been in relationship with a lover for years, and they haven't yet made that kind of an agreement with each other. So they keep cycling through a lot of the same old, same old, same old, same old. Here we go again, because they haven't gotten down to the core, the really core issue that's underneath. So the one that's aggravating us up here at the top is just the entry point into, why is this such a loaded subject for me? Why is this such a tender area for me? And if people can calm down enough and regulate their emotions, they can really learn a lot of important material about themselves and the other.
I think you just made a really great point is that um like regulating your emotion and like being able to understand yourself and like why it's triggering you to get so upset. How do you like figure that out? And like cuz when someone triggers you, your emotions are like are blowing up, right? So I would imagine that's not really the best time. You're not in the best state to be able to actually, figure those things out. So how do you go about
We sometimes
knowing
have
that?
to take a break first,
Right.
settle ourselves down, bring our blood pressure down, bring our heart rate down. Some deep breaths will often do that. And to have an agreement with the person that you're making the agreements with, that you're going to learn from these, that is a nice agreement to put in place too. That if anybody needs a break, okay, either one of you can call a break. Doesn't have to necessarily be very long. But if you have an intention to look and see, why is it that I am so triggered right now? Here is a helpful hint. We have sore spots. A lot of them are left over from family of origin. Some of them are left over from prior adult relationships. But we have places where we got wounded
Right.
and they're sore. And this is an opportunity to take a look at, whoa, I am really having some very strong emotion here. What is it that got banged into right then? I'll use an example. I'm a concrete thinker, so I tend to teach with examples because I think it helps bring the theory down to some basics. When my husband and I got together, and he would notice that I was upset about something, his modus operandi, because he's an introvert, would be to go off by himself. And he deals with things internally. I'm a flaming extrovert, so I want to talk about it. And so when he would notice that I would be tense or upset about something, he would go away. And that would make it worse.
Worse.
Worse, because my sore spot left over from family of origin was being ignored.
Okay.
So I had a huge spot, and he kept banging into that. And we cycled through it so many times, and he finally said, would something else be better? I always think you need some time to think it over and see what's going on.
Smart man.
And I said, yeah, I'll tell you what would be better. Don't go away and stay here with me and ask me, is there anything you need from me? Is there anything you want to talk to me about? And just your showing up with some compassion, some interest, some curiosity, it heals that sore place. But you need a lot of repetitions for the ones that are very sore.
Right.
Now, he had a different sore spot from me. His big sore spot was nobody's going to control me.
Hmm.
Because in his family of origin, he was the oldest child, and a lot of responsibility was put on his shoulders. And he felt the whole time he was growing up in his family of origin that there was too much control and that he didn't have the freedom that he really longed for. And so unwittingly, I kept banging into his sore spot. But we both have a signature strength that we're hungry learners. So I would notice that he would tense up. And sometimes it was just a simple request that I was making of him. I felt so innocent. And he said, I feel like I'm going to be in trouble. I'm in the doghouse if I don't come across with what you want. And I said, no, I'm just asking. Would you be willing to? I'm willing to take no for an answer. But we had to cycle through it many times because he was very tender in that area. So I want the listening audience to know that all of us have our sore spots. I'm not blaming our family of origin. They did the best they could. But it left us with some sore places. And sometimes it came from school. Sometimes it came from religious training. We can have areas of sensitivity from a lot of different places, but a whole lot of them come from our family.
I feel like the examples that you gave are actually very common
Yeah.
to men and women. Like, typically men will, like, walk away or leave when, conflict starts to arise, and that just infuriates a woman even more because what she really wants is a man who can, stand strong and handle, like, the flame coming at him, to know that he's there and he's not going anywhere. And men too, like, they don't like to be told what to do, and so, like, that dynamic, I feel, is pretty common.
There's some truth to what you're saying about the genders, but I'm always reluctant to make too many sweeping generalizations
Sure,
about the
sure.
genders because there's plenty of women who are very sensitive to issues of control, and there's
Absolutely.
a whole lot of men who are very, very sensitive about being ignored, and have a sensitivity to being abandoned. So it goes both ways.
Both ways.
But generally speaking, I do think that there is some truth to the gender differences.
Yeah. So, let's say that you're feeling tension with your partner, and you've you've communicated with clenched teeth that you need a timeout. Like, what would you do next?
I think sometimes you can be in the same room. You maybe need to have a little space between you in the room, a little quiet time, contemplative time. You sometimes might get so overheated that you have to leave the room and go into another room. Some people have to leave the house, they have to go outside, they have to walk. It's important when you take your leave that you don't stomp your feet and slam the door. The purpose is to settle down. And as soon as you keep the agreement about if we get overheated, we need to interrupt our interaction till we can not have our reptilian brain running us, which only knows freeze, fight, and flight. And when we calm down, we re-engage neocortex. That's the thinking, creative part of the brain that sees all kinds of options. We're very limited when we're so emotionally aroused that only the primitive part of the brain is working. Sometimes just a breath or two is enough to calm down, particularly when you get real experience with this. I believe in the peace treaty. I learned this from a Buddhist scholar and Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat Hanh. And Thich Nhat Hanh runs a community in France called Plum Village. And everybody who lives there takes a pledge to a peace treaty. And the peace treaty means if you're a blurter and you don't think before you speak, you need to sit in meditation first if somebody upsets you before you speak to them. So you're more apt to be constructive. If you're
Right.
avoidant and you tend to stuff things and you put them in the denial zone, there's a 24-hour rule that less is better, but no more than 24 hours can go by before you put yourself in the position to address the person who has hit your sore spot so that you can have some understanding with that person, not necessarily agreement, but just understand each other's point of view, which is a lot. I think 24 hours for connectors like me is really a hardship. My husband learned that early on. And so he would take his time outs, but he wouldn't take longer than he absolutely needed because he knew that my anxiety was very high because my catastrophizing mind was going berserk. Oh, this is the argument that's going to cause the end of our relationship. You know, my mind would spin out and be wild about how awful it was going to be. And so he would come back soon and say, you know, let's do a do-over here. Let's pick up the threads and see if we can't understand each other's point of view. And that would dissolve to a large degree the power struggle that was going on, which every couple has to go through. They have a period like that. Some couples become the Bickersons and they do that, you know, for 5 decades. It's so unnecessary, but they
Yep.
just didn't learn how to be peaceful warriors. They didn't learn how to be warriors of the heart. They didn't take the contemplative pauses to calm themselves down. So they didn't say things that they didn't even really mean and that they were sorry for afterward. One of the things that really helped us a lot is when we read the research, which backed up what we had already discovered personally, that when you give rein to, give free expression to, letting your judgments and your criticism come flying out your mouth in hopes that the catharsis is going to make you feel better, it doesn't really work very well. It
Right.
often makes things worse. And there's been decades of research. And Geen is one of the people in Great Britain who did the pioneering workshop. Research that the more you express the anger, the more anger it tends to generate because you instigate retaliation coming back from the other person, resistance coming back, and this attack defend doesn't create understanding. If people get that, then they practice self-discipline. And they know when to be quiet and to settle down and to try to speak their truth of their experience without the blame and judgment. And when we teach our workshops, we're all about speak from your heart, speak from your feelings, speak from your deeper experience, not from your mind, where it's full of opinions, which are often very critical, which invite retaliation from the other person. even if you're right about what you're criticizing them about, people get defensive.
Right.
So this is a belief system that this expression isn't going to make it better. The expression is often going to inflame things. But the alternative is not just to stuff it and to hold it in, because that's not good for us either. It's the art form of being the validating couple rather than being the phobic couple, the resistant couple that keeps things in the denial zone, the conflict phobic couple, or the volatile couple who just lets it fly. That's not going to work either. What we're all trying to do is to identify who we are, who we're with, and where we're going, and to hold that as a reality that I can speak my truth without the blame and judgment. I can ask more questions. I can create a context just out of my commitment and intention that we're going to have a win here and that we both get to win when we understand.
So you mentioned just like a couple of seconds ago different styles of conflict. Can you go into a little bit greater detail on those different styles and how to identify yourself and partner?
Yeah, well, people usually know when they're avoidant
Sure.
because they knock themselves out to try to skirt around issues. They don't want to bring up the tough issues. If somebody else brings up a tough issue to them, they try to distract or minimize it. And so, if you know you're avoidant, and the two avoidant couple is the one most risk to break up or to stay in a relationship that really isn't working because they never really deal with the important issues that need to be dealt with. The other couple that also is at risk, but not as at risk as the avoidant couple, is the volatile couple. And they name call and they threaten and they give ultimatums and they get controlling and they get rigid and it's my way or the highway. And they accuse people of, you don't really care about me, or you don't really love me. And if you really love me, you wouldn't say those things or you wouldn't expect that of me. And this is also an at-risk couple, but not as at risk as the one that puts things in the denial zone. But they don't even really get complete on issues either because they keep going around with the same stuff because they haven't really gotten down to the core of what's going on there. The validating couple, they're the high achievers. They're the eager beavers. They may have started out as avoidant or they may have started out as volatile, but they have learned how to refine their communication, negotiate for their needs, and speak from their experience rather than their opinions, which are often critical and invite retaliation. So I'm a big believer in John Gottman. I really respect his work. He used those titles for the couples. We were teaching this long before I ever learned those titles, and I called them the blurters and the stuffers. Do you know? And if we're a stuffer, we need to grow some courage and risk bringing up the tough subjects and start, feeling stronger and capable and more courageous. And if we're a blurter, we have to practice self-discipline to calm ourselves down and not indulge in just, putting things out there that may be very damaging and hard to recover from because the intimacy and trust is damaged. It's just inefficient use of our time because the repair takes days, weeks, sometimes months. And to hold the vision that we can all become highly accomplished communicators and negotiators. And once you know that it's possible, your mind starts reaching for, how am I going to do this? What would be the most efficient way for me to do this? A good friend of mine is Susan Campbell, and she wrote a book called The 5-Minute Relationship Repair. It sold a lot of books because everybody wants the quick fix. Doesn't that sound good? The 5-minute relationship repair? But
Yeah, we all want a quick
we all
fix.
want the quick fix. It's true. It doesn't take very long. It just takes thousands of repetitions.
Right.
You have to do that 5 minutes. to pause and reflect and pull yourself together so you're bringing your best self to the conversation many, 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 many times, because the old patterns, they die out so slow. You know,
Right.
old habits are hard to break. And it's possible to create new wonderful patterns, but it takes a lot of repetitions. And then the old ones, they just slough off like old dried up snake skin, doesn't need it anymore. Outgrew it.
So what do you do if you're in a relationship where like you are coming to the table where you're really trying to like be vulnerable and have, an effective dialogue and have understanding, but your partner is not? How do you handle that?
Great question. Because some people haven't even got to the point yet where they see that they've got some work to do to have a great relationship. And the person who is ready to do that kind of a work has to appeal to the other person's enlightened self interest. You're going to be so much better off when we learn how to do this really with style.
So how do you?
When you appeal to their enlightened self interest, we're not going to argue so much. We're going to get along. We're going to understand each other. We're going to know what each other's sore spots are. We're not going to keep banging into the same old ones. We're going to rise up from being a couple in conflict or in denial, and we're going to be among the happiest couples. And we're going to have less arguments, and we're going to have great sex too. And we're going to have emotional intimacy. And this is what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be happy. They want to get along. They want to live in peace, but you got to pay some dues to get there.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking of like one of my past unhealthy relationships. The guy was definitely an avoidant person, eh, like to the extreme of like stonewalling, where he would just like disappear for hours, sometimes like a day, and then he'd come back and he'd ignore me for hours. Um, and it was so painful, and it was hard because I felt like I was like walking on eggshells. I never knew what I was gonna do next that would trigger him. Um, do you think it's possible to reach a place in a relationship where you have this healthy conflict dynamic with somebody who is still hurting from um like past trauma or experiences? Like,
We're all in recovery from some disappointments.
sure.
Some of us small, some of medium size, and some of us really large. This guy that you were with before, and it's no wonder that the relationship didn't work out, must have had a lot of traumatic experiences with important people who let him down and that he trusted, and they betrayed his trust somehow. And so he was not adept with how to deal with it yet. He needs to do some recovery work first.
Right.
But it's very important if you're with somebody who is like that to have a fine-tuned bullshit detector, because they may say they want to work with you, but the actions show that they don't want to. And not to stay in the relationship overly long if they really don't want to do their work and work with you. And
I think that's Yeah, I think that's a very important piece for myself and other women who are constantly attracting unhealthy relationships, like something to look for to help you decide whether to stay and work it out or leave is to really be observant of their behavior. What are their patterns?
that's right, because they might say, oh, yes, I'm interested in personal growth. Oh, yes, I'll go to couples counseling. Oh, yes, I'll go to the workshop. But when it's time to go, they don't have excuses and they're too busy. And if the relationship workshop costs too much and this and that. And you'll know if you're really paying attention, because the behaviors will tell you more than what the person says. And sometimes they flat out say, I don't believe in couples counseling and I don't believe in those relationship workshops and I don't read those relationship books. We love each other. It should just work out. No, we love each other and that's a good start, but that's not the whole thing. We
Yeah,
need some skills. And a lot of people didn't learn them from their family, and we have a learning deficit. It's not some kind of deep seated psychopathology. But this was a deal breaker in your relationship with him because it was a
absolutely.
basic values difference. There are not a lot of there are not a lot of reasons that couples really need to break up. They're just a handful. You can count them on one hand. Addiction, alcohol and drug addiction, abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. And this values difference is very important also. But it isn't the addiction itself or the emotional psychological abuse itself or the value difference itself. It's the not wanting to address it. Because there are people who are struggling with addiction who they're working their program, they're getting a sponsor. There are people who have violence in their history, both emotional violence and or physical violence, but they're going to therapy every single week and they're in an anger management group and they're really getting a grip on it. And it's the same with the people with the values difference. You were ready because you valued using what the relationship tossed up to learn and grow and deepen the relationship and strengthen the bond and really know each other more intimately. And he hadn't, I hope he will at some point, arrived at the place where he could even value what you were offering to him. It's his loss because I think you were a great teacher that got sent to him and he wasn't ready to receive the teaching.
Was a great teacher for me too,
Yes,
of
your
what I don't want.
your bullshit detector is high tuned now.
It definitely
You
is.
wouldn't waste time with somebody who didn't want to learn and grow with you, especially about the difficult issues that create tension in the relationship. Hey, let's take a look at what's going on here. How can we understand each other better? It's all growth waiting to happen.
Growth. Love growth. Sometimes it's so uncomfortable, but I feel like, it always brings you to a better place.
Yes, when people get that, they just see that's dues I got to pay to have a great relationship. That's
Yeah.
the price of admittance.
So the final thing that I kind of wanna talk about, before our time is up is how, um, training ourselves to build a habit of, recognizing when we're getting to an emotional place where we need a break. We take our break, we come back. How do we start to work through the issue in a way to create that connection and build intimacy instead of break it?
Great question. I can't say enough about the power of intention. Before I used that word, when I first started to teach workshops, I used the word introductory remarks, the phrase introductory remarks about how to get off on a good foot. Now I'm more apt to use the word intention because I love the word and it's a mighty, mighty tool in the toolkit. That when you're on break and you come back for the next round, I don't mean like a boxing match round, like a song, singing with
Okay.
another round, that you come back with a clear intention. I want to take responsibility for my part in what just has happened. I'd like to apologize to you for having tone in my voice. I realized I had a very cutting edge of my voice. Or I realized when I was on break that what I said may have sounded like a threat to you. or whatever it is you're taking responsibility for. And my intention is to have a constructive dialogue with you. My intention is not to criticize you or guilt trip you or shame you or threaten you. My intention is to be closer to you. My intention is to understand more deeply your sore spots. My intention is to stay engaged with you so that you understand my sore spot and why I got so triggered when you said da 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 da. I'm not blaming you. I'm taking responsibility for it was my reactivity. But you touched a place that's really sore with me about whatever it is, attractiveness, being sexy, being intelligent, being productive, being lazy, being whatever it is. And to talk about what's there at the core. I want to understand you deeply, the core of your being. I would hope that you would receive me and understand me and accept me with my flaws, my idiosyncrasies. We all have them. But could we have a dialogue about why we veered off the road? Let's get back on the road. Do you see what I'm saying about the power of intention?
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, hearing you say that, like, I felt in my body, like, a natural pull towards you, which is so amazing. Like, I actually wanted to sit down with you and yeah, I my answer was yes to you instead of, like, a wall going up saying, like, I like, the words that you used made me wanna listen and sit down next to you.
That's it.
It
It's
was so powerful.
invitation. Come
Yes.
closer to me. I'm
Yeah,
I'm a safe person. I'm not a dangerous person. My intention is not to hurt you. My intention is not to control you. My intention is to know you. I want you to know me. My intention is to be close. I want to have a trusting bond here. Do you know that invites a person to come close and you felt it?
I
You
did,
felt
yeah.
the realness. You felt the authenticity of it. And when a person feels that from us, it's like they can't help themselves.
Yeah.
They lean in. Okay, okay, I'm really safe. You're not going to judge me. You're not going to make me bad and wrong. You're not going to control me. You don't have a script you want to put in my hands for how I have to be. I can be free to be myself and to be real and to be authentic. Yeah, that's a good deal.
Yeah. I think that is huge and so powerful, your point on intention, and I think that for the women listening, that is, a really important piece that we all should be looking for in a life, like a long-term fulfilling relationship is a man that you can feel safe with to express the deepest parts of yourself. And that also, like, the opposite is a really big red flag if you are wanting to come towards the person and share with them but you don't feel safe. This is something that I talk on a lot, is like, if you don't feel safe sharing with them because you're afraid that of, like, what their reaction is going to be, whether they're going to be dismissive or get angry, like, that is a flag to look out for, because that
Yes.
vulnerability is so important.
And if they repeatedly violate your boundaries and
Yeah,
treat you well, that's important information. But
yeah,
I'm always telling people, don't give up too soon. Don't stay
sure.
overly long when the signs are all over the place, but don't give up too soon. And this enlightened self interest part is so important because everybody wants the same thing. They want to feel safe. They want to feel bonded. They want to feel loved as is. And if we can invite them in and take responsibility for creating this safe space, and I actually ask more of the women in the network than the men, because I feel like women have a lot of sense about what that requires. So when you're in the leadership role, you have to take more responsibility for creating that safe space.
Right.
And ask the guy, What do you need to feel safer with me? How am I speaking to you, or how am I being that you don't feel safe with me? Because I would like to put the corrections in if I can, but I can't do this on my own. I need you to participate with me. And I always tell the women in the network, step into the leadership role. Men have an easier time of stepping into the leadership role, but they grew up in a different culture. We're well into the 21st century, but they still are in that big boys don't cry. That's still around a lot, where the men think it's some kind of wussy and weak to be vulnerable and to express their feelings and their needs. And women know how essential that is. I'm generalizing here, but I do feel that women have some expertise and they need to be really effective teachers. My husband calls this teaching from the back of the room. Do you know, where you're not too showy about it, that you're low key and subtle about it? And the people who are your students, they own it. Do you understand what I mean? That
Right,
somebody didn't put it in, they invited it out.
right, right.
And so we need to be such effective teachers about what great relationships are made of, that people take ownership of it and say, ah, I get it. I need to create a safe space. Well, I need to get a grip on the ways in which I'm critical and judgmental. I need to risk a little bit more about sharing my feelings and needs. Yeah, I need to rethink this thing about being vulnerable as weakness. Actually, I think that's my power after all. And then it's like the light bulbs go off. So I really appeal to the women who are listening that they have extremely important part to play, and not to give up too soon, to really get so adept at creating the safe space and the curiosity and wonder to learn together, that it's a compelling invitation. And maybe he won't be the lifetime partner, but he might be a good lab partner. So practice, practice, practice. He's getting you ready for the one who might be the one.
Yeah. Wow. Linda, thank you so much. I have gotten so much
Good.
from this talk, and I hope our listeners have too. Where is the best place to find you?
If people can remember Linda Bloom or Bloomwork, which is our website, they will go right to the site. They will find all kind of free goodies on the site. We've got several hundred blogs on Psychology Today. We've got 3 free ebooks. If people give us their email address, they get the End to Arguing ebook, they get a sex ebook, and they get the 10 most important things that we've learned since we got married. And they have a link to the YouTube channel, Charlie and Linda Bloom, with a bunch of videos like this on all kinds of things, and there are a bunch of them on conflict.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you again for joining us and sharing with us your wisdom and knowledge on relationships. I'm so grateful.
And thank you too for inviting me and for taking on this very important topic. There's a lot to learn about having great relationships. You
And
know,
communication is a big piece of it.
it's a big piece of it. And good communication and relationships lead to happiness and well being, which everybody wants. So thanks for what you do in the world too.
Well, thank you. Talk soon.